$8 million, and yet another dig turns up empty in Canada. That's how much money was wasted excavating and digging through archival evidence at the Kamloops residential school, where leftists told us that over 200 bodies would be found of Indigenous kids, they said, murdered by evil white Christians. And yet all these years later, not a single body has even been found. And it's not like the school is all that big to go digging around, or that it's some easy feat to dig up hundreds of bodies and then hide them somewhere else to avoid bad publicity. They just aren't there. The mass graves hoax, as I've been talking about since it first became an issue back in 2021, is just that, a hoax. I hate to let you guys in on this little secret, but 3 years ago, it was nearly impossible for me to find any conservative guests willing to come on the show to talk about this obvious fraud being used to torch dozens of mostly Catholic and other Christian churches. I was only successful in welcoming on 2 guests about it, one of which was Lauren Southern. Other than that, conservative media was largely silent as historic and sacred places of worship went up in flames due to the actions of true bigoted hate mongers. You'd see articles about it here and there in conservative media, sure, but that was all. It was a sideshow. No one really talked about it much. No dogged coverage of it was done. No perpetual outrage machine dedicated to debunking the lies behind this horror. Most of the articles, in fact, didn't even really question the hoax itself, just the churches burning down. Even as Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and left-wing activists in the Indigenous community and elsewhere absolutely, disgustingly smeared my faith as being that of genocidal maniacs who like to take Native American babies away from their families to faraway boarding schools just to torture and murder them. No talk about how such educational requirements came from the secular Canadian government, which handed the task off to religious centers to be carried out, just to teach kids. That's all, no torture. No talk of how this was seen as the progressive and enlightened thing to do to help Indigenous children catch up with white children. No talk of how disease and malnutrition was rampant for all young kids back in the days of high infant and child mortality rates. No talk of how the graveyards did indeed have records and markers attached to them, even as many eroded over the years, meaning that kids weren't being murdered and dumped out back in mass graves to be lost to time. Again, not a single mass grave has been found to date as we speak, not one body recovered, and not for lack of funding or trying or propaganda.